Good evening, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the off-season hurricane outlook and discussion for December 1st, 2020, recorded around 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We are finally into the off-season of what was a very busy 2020 Atlantic hurricane season. You can see here the preliminary tracking chart, all finalized from the Hurricane Center. You can see that we have had 30 named storms this season, and what will go on to be the most record breaking hurricane season and the busiest on record since 1850. It was a very busy season, and we can see that we had a lot of storm tracks that we talked about this in the very beginning of the season, how we are seeing the signs for a very busy season and that the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean could be very primed for hurricane development. And we certainly saw that with a lot of the storms. Most of the activity was confined in here to the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, with most of the storm tracks originating out there. And then it was much quieter out over the open Atlantic. However, there was still multiple shorter lived systems here, and there was also one major hurricane out here, which was Paulette. And you can see that there was also some additional other hurricanes in here and some subtropical systems. So there was definitely a very busy hurricane season, and one that will definitely go down in the record books. And the latest named storm, which was Iota, became that very devastating Category 5 hurricane, and of course impacted Nicaragua and Honduras as a Category 5. And you can also see that down here in the central Gulf Coast, you can see one, two, three, four, five systems that were tropical systems of at least tropical storm strength in the Gulf of Mexico, and really almost all of them, other than Cristobal, which is this track in here, and Marco, which is this track here, were hurricanes out here approaching landfall. You can see all the other storms, the one, two, three, four other storms that were there caused impacts and made landfall as a hurricane, and obviously then Laura as that very devastating Category 4 up near Lake Charles, Louisiana. So, with all that being said, we come to the final resting place for the upper ocean heat content map. This is the final kind of the final image that we're going to do of this until we start getting back into May of next year, because we're gonna, it takes a lot of time for this upper ocean heat content to kind of dwindle and come back. But this is the final map updated as of today, and you can see that again, most of the upper ocean heat content has been taken out of the deep tropics. You can see now a lot of that upper ocean heat content now towards the south of the Cabo Verde Islands. So we're almost kind of back where we started way back in April, etc. We kind of started, all of that back there. And what has really happened is all these hurricanes has really taken a toll out of this upper ocean heat content map, and you can really see that here. The greatest concentration in the tropics still remains down here in the Caribbean, which is well expected for this time of the year, but elsewhere, unfavorable for tropical cyclone activity. Now, with that being said, however, this is the departures from normal. This is the sea surface temperature anomaly map, and we haven't really looked at this in a while. But what this is really showing is the departures from normal in these sea surface temperatures, and we can very clearly see where we are today. As well, this was updated as of yesterday, but where we are as of yesterday, but really just kind of makes it forward to say today. We have again a La Nina pattern that is well in place right now, well established, and then we have deep warming elsewhere across most of the entire Atlantic basin. You can see that there are some cool patches now starting to show up, mainly out here in the subtropical Atlantic and also out here in the southwestern Atlantic. But elsewhere, this whole entire area is still very warm, and you can still kind of make out that horseshoe pattern with the AMO configuration, the Phase 1 AMO, which we transitioned into really in the peak of the hurricane season and allowed all these storms to come off of Africa and these waves. But you can definitely see where a lot of it has also been taking out here in the central Gulf, and this is because generally these cold fronts that have now come through, Florida is seeing its coolest air, where we are actually down to about 47 degrees already, and it's only 6:37 at night here in the Florida Peninsula. So we're definitely getting into the 30s tonight, in maybe even some 20s across Upper Florida. So this is definitely a kind of a shot at really cold air now, diving down out of the, really out of Canada, moving all the way down here into Florida. But this will kind of change with time. You'll start to see these values really decline. But if we start to hold on to these numbers through, May, kind of in through, May and etc., and down the road, then potentially into June, July, August, we might be looking at what could be shaping up for next hurricane season. Now, again, we just ended hurricane season yesterday. We have 6 months of quiet, so let's enjoy this quiet while we can. Now, this is what I find very interesting here. This is basically the CFS, the climate forecast system. So this is a climate specific model, and this is forecast all the way out to August of 2021, and we're looking at the sea surface temperature anomalies. So basically what we were just looking at before, now we're putting it into a forecast and looking out beyond with time. So this is 1 month from now. This is valid January of 2021. And again, you can see our very prevalent La Nina out here. Now, this is what I want to pay attention to is this area. I'm not really worried about the Atlantic Basin right now, but in the longer term, you can start to see as we head towards May and June, the actual La Nina pattern begins to quickly erode, and we get sort of a Madoki La Nina. And we talked about this in a sense with a Madoki El Nino last year in 2019. Was the fact that we had an El Nino over the central Pacific and kind of neutral out generally across to the east of there towards South America. And again, this was responsible for some of the vertical wind shear that's kind of been in place, or that was in place across the Caribbean, all the way up and through really, August and September of this year, when it, finally decreased with the interseasonal phase, etc. But we can start to see maybe that this is a Central Pacific featured La Nina event, and across out here, we actually start getting some semblance of warming and potential for an El Nino event. And you can actually see by July, this becomes more El Nino based, and this cooler than normal water begins to fade away and be replaced with warmer than normal water. And at the meantime, in the Atlantic basin, you can see a lot of subtropical based warmth. Now, we're looking, 6 to 7 months from now. This obviously means that we are not necessarily going to have a very good understanding of this because this is very preliminary. And that's what I want to make sure is that this, you kind of make, understand that, hey, this is preliminary and this is likely not going to be the end result. But if we can continue to see consensus and trends that point in this direction, maybe some glimmer of hope uh, towards a quieter hurricane season next year. But obviously, absolutely no guarantees at the moment. Now, one place where it isn't going to be so quiet, at least for the next several days, is going to be generally over the Western Pacific and over the Indian Ocean. A big Mount Julian oscillation phase here pushing over those regions, although the hurricane season globally is beginning to quiet down, and you'll see then the South Pacific really towards like Australia, that will end up end up get going there towards Australia. But generally, right now, the biggest phase of the Mount-Julian oscillation is located over the Indian Ocean and over the West Pacific, and that will kind of be translating and just hanging around that area for the next several days. And even by week 2, you can see here this is now starting to approach the United States mainland out here. So maybe some special weather potentially coming up towards the mid-December range. We'll just have to see how that plays out. But by and large, right now, everything remains relatively well. Now, out here across the lower 48 weather, as we kind of transition closer to home, closer towards where a lot of the majority of people are right now, we're going to look here. This is the United States hazard map put together by, basically the National Weather Service offices, all 122 of them. And again, you can see that we have some winter weather events right now to speak about. We have a winter storm warning in effect for portions of Oklahoma and southern Kansas, and a winter weather advisory for the northern panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma, and also some winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories in effect for portions of Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, and even part of New York as well, the state. And again, you can see definitely down here across Florida and the Southeast, we have freeze warnings that are in effect for portions of Florida, Georgia, and southeastern Alabama, and wind chill advisories for portions of southern Florida, where the wind chills could get down into the 30s tonight. And area wide, we're expecting, certainly in Florida, area wide could see, low to mid 30s. And then in the north part here, you could see, high 20s to low 30s for overnight lows. So be on the lookout for that. Obviously, the growing season is practically over at this point, and anywhere that actually does see a freeze tonight across this area, the growing season is going to be over. And that is why we have these freeze warnings that are in effect, because the growing season is not actually over in these places yet. But by tonight, they probably will be over. So these freeze warnings will no longer be issued for those areas once the growing season has ended as of tonight. Now, looking at the wide mosaic here from the National Weather Service, you can see the all the NextRed sites here. Again, generally, most of the snow shower activity is going to be confined out here, kind of along this area in Ohio and Pennsylvania. Now, kind of moving through the Pittsburgh area, and then upstate into New York, etc. And again, this will be all lifting out towards the north and east over the next several days, and will kind of bring some much quieter and calmer conditions across portions of the Midwest. This is that developing snow system out here in response, because there's going to be some snow coming out across here, and in response from another clipper system that's going to be impacting the area. So we turn our attention now towards what might be happening later in towards next week, etc. Kind of looking just briefly at the forecast right now from the GFS forecast, the GFS Global Forecast System. We can see all these snow showers out here. This is from an occluded front. You can see the front has now passed well down here. This is now through the Bahamas at this point. These thickness lines, you can very clearly see them packed in through here. So the front is definitely somewhere in this area at the moment. Moving forward in time, you can see that snow system that's going to be developing, bringing some snow to that region. And then what might be happening towards the later week, we get warm air advection again, so temperatures will rise back into the 70s across Florida. Very nice, especially heading towards Thursday and Friday as that warm air advection starts to take place. We might get another round of snow and another batch of very heavy rainfall setting up across Florida. Again, maybe another round of potential severe weather out across this area within the next several days. This is by Saturday morning. And you can see what's going to be setting up here as this low starts to occlude. We start to get much of the same process as last time. We do get another snow event out across parts of Indiana and Ohio, and that actually becomes a fairly potent snow event, and maybe even an icing event out across the northeastern United States. So maybe something to watch towards later in the week and in through early next week. We'll just have to continue to monitor the trends on that. And of course, I will talk about that more in detail tomorrow when we do our winter and severe weather outlooks tomorrow. All right. With that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of your Tuesday evening. Of course, I am Michael Romali. I'll talk to you guys again some more tomorrow.